Alright. Let's go to work, James. I've been off for a week, and quite a bit has happened in the week that I was off. So I don't really know where to begin. I guess most recently, some guy last night drove a van into a bunch of people outside a mosque, killing at least one, injuring, a dozen or more beyond that. And unlike previous attacks like this, it wasn't a Muslim, it wasn't an Islamic extremist, it wasn't someone who's radicalized by Islam. According to early reports, it was a white guy who was sort of held and protected by the imam at the mosque there from the crowd, because understandably the crowd was upset and wanted to kick the shit out of him. But the imam stopped that. There's reports that there were two other people who fled the scene who were part of the whole thing. And this guy was apprehended and arrested. Eyewitnesses are saying that he did this because he wanted to kill Muslims and the whole bit. It's funny. It's not funny. It's awful. And it's, it's predictable. But people who, in the wake of Islamic terrorist attacks, call for unity and peace and tolerance and, not all Muslims, are very quick to call this out as white supremacy and white hatred and I don't know. I guess, is it really a surprise when a Muslim terrorist attack happens? People are calling out about, the role of Islam, the role of the ideology in the extremist attitudes of the attackers. So it stands to reason that, of course, people on the other side are going to now call out the determining factor, at least in their mind, for why this attack was carried out by this Brit. And when I say Brit, I mean indigenous Brit, right? Someone on Twitter said something along the lines of, there's a difference, okay? White is not an ideology, and Muslim isn't a race. So, the argument being that it is reasonable to criticize an ideology that motivates an attack. It is not reasonable to criticize the person's race as a motivation for the attack. Unless, of course, it's determined as a matter of fact that this was the case. If he'd said, I wanted to kill brown people, then it was a racially motivated attack. But if, as the reports say, I wanted to kill Muslims, then it's ideologically driven, in the same way that Muslims, when they attack, when a Muslim terrorist or an Islamic terrorist attacks people by running over them with a van, he's not attacking because of the people's race, he's attacking because of his ideology, and he's attacking people outside of his ideology. So either attack would be ideologically driven. But from the critics on the other side, the immediate response is, oh, it's because he's white. What does that have to do with him being white? And anytime I see anybody say, oh, we got to stop this white supremacy, I'm like, how does his race factor into it? He's an indigenous Brit who wanted to attack people who he feels belong to an ideology that does not represent the values associated with his homeland. Make no mistake, I'm not apologizing for this guy. I'm calling it out for, you know, the stupidity and viciousness and barbarity of it, in the same way that I would call out an Islamic extremist who did something similar, or when Islamic extremists do similar things. Well, let's take it into context and look at the scale of this. There have been 3 terrorist attacks in London, or in England, I should say, in as many months, which took far greater number of people's lives. And, you know, people are calling for Tommy Robinson's head and Katie Hopkins' head because they're inciting violence. How are they inciting violence to say, hey, Islamic extremism is a problem, and these terrorist attacks are a problem, and our officials need to do something about it? Tommy Robinson gave a warning a little while back, I think it was shortly after the Manchester attack, saying, look, the authorities, the officials, the politicians, the police, they need to do something about this, or people are going to take things into their own hands. And that's not something that anybody wants. So he predicted that this might happen. But now people are saying, see, he incited this guy to hatred. How do you incite this guy to hatred? I think maybe the terrorist attacks incited hatred towards Muslims. I'm just going to go out on a limb there. Maybe suggest that it's not a normal response to say, oh, well, you know, terrorist attacks are just part and parcel of living in a big city, and just letting it wash off your back. That is a psychotic response. To be upset that innocent people are being killed by a specific radicalized group within a specific community, and then finally lash out, is a predictable response. It's not a reasonable response, it's not a justified response, but it's predictable. And predicting it the way Tommy Robinson did is not incitement to those people. As though they heard Tommy Robinson make this prediction and go, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'll do that. No, people got sick of seeing children blown up at concerts, and people got sick of seeing tourists and just regular innocent folks mowed down by vans, walking across a bridge. This guy targeted the specific community who he sees as responsible, or in some part responsible, or at least the origin point for those attacks. Keep in mind now that where he attacked also, the mosque in question, the Islamic Community Center in question, has a long history of being an extremist mosque. Back in 2002, a news report came out revealing that it was involved in funding and supporting terrorists. Apparently, they'd found that they were doing weapons training at this particular mosque. And the mosque was shut down in 2002. It was reopened. Apparently, a radical imam spoke at that mosque, gave sermons at that mosque, who was ultimately arrested for his involvement with terrorism and extremist groups. Now, apparently the mosque has since been taken over by the larger Islamic community in the area, and it's now an open, community center that welcomes anybody of any faith to come and receive its services, whatever those amount to. But given its history, I don't think it's an accident that this particular mosque was targeted by this guy. But you contrast that with the attack at the Ariana Grande concert. They targeted specifically innocent people who weren't part of any given ideology. But I guess to the Islamic extremists, anybody who goes to a pop concert and watches Ariana Grande, sing and dance on stage, they're part of the, what's the word, I guess, evil, decadent Western culture that has no morals. Construction. Anyway. The difference is they're little children at the Ariana Grande concert. Outside this mosque, my understanding is that only adult men were hit. Whether that's because the guy was just a really good targeting driver or what, but it was a group of men that was struck, 10 or 11 in total, one of which died on the scene. I don't know. You might say I'm engaging in apologetics for this attack. I'm not. I'm trying to sort out the details. What's most frustrating is the silence and peaceful words and calls for peace on the part of apologists for Islam and Muslims, and how their tunes changed immediately. Versus on this side, the people who've been calling out Islamic extremism, all I've heard them say is, this is terrible, this is not good. In the case of Tommy Robinson, it was predictable. In the case of Nigel Farage, he was basically saying this could get bad, right? He's not saying that it was justified or anything stupid like that. He was just saying, look, things could get a lot worse a lot more quickly now, because this is now a backlash attack. But whatever, I don't know. I'm at work. Thanks for watching.